Well, gents, I think we imagined beforehand that the Bears were going to miss a certain pass rusher, but they missed pretty much everything. There's very little positive to take away from their worst loss of the season.
Yeah, it was pretty bad, embarrassing and sad. I've got a couple text messages from Bears fans and friends of mine. That's what they said. But I want to take full accountability on picking the Bears. I was wrong. I made a mistake before the game. I just want to let you know what accountability sounds like.
Yeah.
No, but it was just it was bad. After coming off a week like that with all that turmoil going on within Haugh to see that performance,
yeah,
it was terrible. And yes, there were people injured, but we said in the pregame, I thought maybe they still had the talent to win the game. Obviously, they didn't. They didn't execute anyway. So it was just sad and embarrassing.
Yeah, it was embarrassing to watch that game. It wasn't a good effort. You thought without Montez Sweat, eventually the defense line would struggle as the game went on, right?
Yes.
Against the run, putting pressure on the quarterback. But bigger than all of this is the fact that count me as shocked that calling everybody out in the media and going public with everything and airing your dirty laundry. Call me as shocked that doesn't work.
Yep.
It never works, right? So you were hoping that we were all hoping that they would come out there, put on a good performance, try to pull off a win in Arizona. We talked about how important this game was for Coach Eberflus. It's hard to explain how bad they looked out there today. It really is hard to even break down. Like, there was nobody who played a good football game. You're always trying to find one or two positives, right? They couldn't stop the run. They got physically beat. Their offense didn't move the ball. Their receivers had a big advantage on the cornerbacks who couldn't score. Their defense was giving up 26 points a game almost, right? We end up with 9 points against a defense that doesn't have anybody. They have Buda Baker, but up front they don't have anybody.
Yeah.
It's just really, really a frustrating game to watch. I can't tell you how bad I feel watching that game after hearing what I heard come from the locker room all week from these guys talking too damn much.
Now, Olin, last week you pointed out that you can't lose two games at one fell swoop. Am I wrong to feel like their 18th consecutive loss on a Sunday was predictable because of the way they lost in Washington? If they had won in Washington, do you believe we'd have seen a different performance from the Bears in Arizona?
It was weird because when you turned the film on after the Washington game, if you took the Hail Mary out, it wasn't terrible.
Right.
Right, it wasn't terrible, but then the announcement late that Montez Sweat was out, that had you worried, right? Because we all know what that defense was before Montez Sweat showed up. But you thought they had enough guys in Billings and Edmonds and T.J. Edwards and Byard and Johnson, and when Tyreek Stevenson came back on the field, you thought they would have enough guys against a Cardinals team that doesn't overwhelm you with talent.
Yeah.
But now the answer has to be, Mully, yes. The answer is yes. Like the Hail Mary, questioning your head coach, coming out in the media immediately, going after guys, questioning your Shane Waldron's call to Kramer. Mannelly, I always tell people this. Now that I do radio, you don't have to say it. I'm going to say it. You don't have to call him out.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it for you, right? But that's why at some point, if you're a leader in the locker room, you have to recognize when it's time to talk and when it's time to circle the wagons. And after that loss last week, as much as Eberflus was bad, the captains on the team failed the team because they didn't circle the wagons. And that's what we were trying to say all week. Why would you call your coach out in the public?
Right.
There's things that have worked since people started playing football. There's things that work. Circling the wagons works. No matter who you think is wrong, like Eberflus, it's too late. Like I called the wrong pass blitz. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. The guy didn't run the blitz correctly. Right. Like you're losing accountability again. Don't lose accountability. I mean, don't lose credibility. Don't. Like call it what it is.
At halftime, as he walked off, you're talking about him taking.
Yeah, saying
credit.
that he called a pass blitz. He didn't. The blitz would have worked if the players would have ran it correctly.
Yes. Yeah.
Again, you got to watch losing credibility in football.
Yeah, we talk about last week and what it was built up to be. This game was played as bad as Haugh was.
Yes.
And then the other thing that, Olin, you were talking about circling the wagons. After the guys said what they said, I hate even going back to last week. After guys said what they said last week, they said, well, I said it. I'd say it again, but now we're going to keep it in-house. So you've you've kind of double talking there to me that it's not a healthy locker room. And that right there shows that game we just watched is not a healthy locker room. It just didn't seem like what we saw at the beginning of the year, guys flying around, playing together. We saw Caleb Williams on the sideline late in the third quarter shaking his head, or was early in the fourth quarter shaking his head with a little frustration. So it will be interesting to see what's going to happen now and coming forward. Is there going to be more talking? Is there going to be more frustration? But to see Caleb kind of shake his head like that, sometimes you just can't help yourself. I think he's in that situation where he's shaking his head. He's just, just not on page with the receivers or whatever the situation is. But I said in the pregame, is this kind of like a defining game for Eberflus if they come out and play like they did? Is this the breaking point for this team?
Well, that's a great question, and I got to tell you, this was worse than last week. Last week, you had one play that went terribly wrong. I mean, you had some dumb calls maybe, but you got through it. You got the lead in the game. The very fact that they lost the way they lost, that's their worst loss of the year. They got beaten up all over the place. They got run over on the run game. They got the old Wilson enema, and they gave up a safety. I mean, I don't know, looking at that game, how, we can't judge what game is worse, but I will go so far as to say this was a significantly worse loss. Now, I get it. No Montez Sweat gives you an excuse, but they were never in this game at all. At least they were in the terrible Washington game, and they fell apart with 30 seconds left. They were never in the game.
They gave 213 yards rushing, right? And the funny thing was, you win the takeaway battle, and you still lose.
Bad,
and you lose badly, right? It's just Montez Sweat should ask for a raise before he comes back, right? I mean, if he means that much to the team. But Brisker was out, Kyler Gordon was out, right?
But they've been out. They've been out. That was the tipping point for the defense.
That was a tipping point for the defense.
And the line was wrecked.
The line. Borum, and then, gosh, you just hope Darnell Wright is healthy, right?
Oh,
I mean,
he left.
He goes out, and then,
Andrew Billings went out.
Billings went out. So they have a ton of injuries, right? They have a ton of injuries right now on their football team. It looked like it by the end of the game. There was frustration, like we talked about. There was frustration after the game last week with everybody talking. There was frustration in game this week, and you want some of that. When you're getting your butt kicked, you want some frustration on your sideline, right? You want some arguing. Not everybody can be kumbaya all the time. Right. But when you're talking to everybody else, when you're outside your building, you should all be together, especially after a really bad loss.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what worried about what was going on last week. I know everyone says these players nowadays are different. There's Twitter, there's podcasts, there's all these things. But there are certain moments in the season that you have to hang together. And that was one of them. And they missed their chance. They missed their chance to hang over. And you don't want to say that's why they look like this today, but it all turned into a 29-9 loss to the Arizona Cardinals, who you say is a very winnable game on paper.
Right.
So if we talk about all these other teams, if it's a winnable game on paper, then you have to look at the coaching and you have to look at the preparation, all the things they talked about last week, right? Like I didn't see a lot of guys that were talking. I didn't see a lot of plays from them. I didn't see them make a lot of plays today. So you're just worried about a team that all that talking at the bench a player, all these things going on, and then you lose a game like that, and now you have all these injuries. This was a really bad football game for Chicago Bears.
Yeah, and everything was bad about it. I mean, the first half, they had 5 penalties on offense, I believe it was, that set them back on all those drives. And we were talking about why can't they start fast. Again, another first quarter with no points because they keep putting themselves in difficult situations to come back from. And you just can't do that, and that's a sign of a bad team. Another thing I thought they would be able to do today, the Cardinals were giving up 140.6 yards a game rushing. I was like, all right, this is a game when you have a backup left tackle in, it's got moving parts on the offensive line, put a running game together, and they still couldn't do it. So just everything fell apart today, and again, it's just that sad, embarrassing loss to lose 29-6 to go out there after a week like they had and put up a performance like that where they just, nobody made plays. Caleb looked off. The O-line did not play well. Obviously, there was more injuries as the game went along. And then the defense and the run game. I mean, that's just – when you said it, Montez Sweat deserves a raise. I mean, it's amazing that one guy can make a difference into 211 yards rushing and 29 points compared to only giving up 21, the most for the season. So it's and where we go from here, I don't know if the injuries. I don't know. And then I want to hear what's going to come out of the locker room. You know, last week the way they spoke, what they were talking about, what's going to come out of the locker room now? What's this week going to be like? Is there going to be finger pointing? If you start getting that, then you've got a fractured team, and you really, really got to start worrying.
Well, I think the other element to this is that now they're back to 500. You know, we know that they are going to be facing teams. They haven't played a division game. We know that's out there. We know their last 8 games of the year, the teams they play have a 70% win rate. They're very good. And we know that the Bears now have a game against New England, which is good for them, but they're 4-4. Like whatever advantage you had built up with your 3-game winning streak, that's gone. You're on a 2-game losing streak. We know that if you lose 3 in a row in the NFL, that's supposed to mean something. That's supposed to be a real warning sign to danger Will Robinson. I don't know that the Bears are capable of even beating a bad New England team. I mean, I think they'll beat them going away.
Well, New England looked better today.
They
lost
look better.
in overtime.
They lost
against a
late.
bad team.
But I'm just saying, if they have the same type of performance,
oh, that's bad.
I mean, this is bad. They are in a bad spot in their season. It feels like a tipping point. It felt like a tipping point going in. And when you talked about the idea that when you knew when Lovey was having this was a big game for the head coach. He needed to win. He needed to win a game on Sunday. He needed to win a game on the road. Now 0-18. That's like now it's not just 1 year. It's 1 year plus. I don't know what to say about it, but I feel like if you really like the guy, if you really wanted to be there for him, you needed to do a hell of a lot better than you did.
Well, I guess we could say he didn't have any really bad coaching decisions, did he? Just it was an all-around bad performance?
What? I don't know who called the onside punt.
Oh, the onside punt,
That didn't work at all.
Well, and let's not forget making your young quarterback keep throwing the ball behind your 6th-string tackle at the end of the game, right? Like at some point, let's pack up and go home. He's your only quarterback.
Yeah.
So that is not a good decision, right? And
right.
Very interested to hear, like Mully talked about, these guys talking about their football team coming out of this game, right? Because I understand, Pat, that sometimes I'm a little too old school in the way I think about the game, the way I think about leadership. I honestly thought coming out of that game, I thought Coach Eberflus and their coach staff failed them on that Hail Mary in the 13 yards. And
yes.
I'm sure they coached him, and someone's supposed to be back there. They call him the savior, guarding the guy who's catching the Hail Mary. And I understand that the handoff to Doug Kramer and Shane Waldron got as much blame as he could get. But I thought their leaders failed them last week. I really did. I thought that, and I talked about that. I talked about it a lot on Friday on the Spiegel and a Holmes show. I talked about a lot about how I thought they were talking too much.
Yeah.
Just too much talking for me, right?
Yeah.
There's a time when even though you don't believe what you're saying, you stand behind your coach. You stand behind your offense coordinator. And you say, look, we all have to get better. It's so simple, right? We all need to get better at what we're doing. So everyone's trying to get the perfect answer. At some point, you got to circle the wagons in. And I think they all need to take blame for a game like this.
Yeah.
For this game right here, they all need to take the blame. And they all need to get better. Nobody was good enough when you watch this football game. We can go through the play calling, the player by player. They were all bad tonight. All of them were bad tonight.
Yeah, that's why I can't wait to hear the message, hear what the guys say after the game.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to what you were saying. Yeah, there was a bad coaching decision. I wonder what Ryan Poles was thinking up there in the box the last minute there when Caleb's getting hit, running around.
Well, that's
he has to be
terrible.
screaming inside of his head, like, what are you doing? Get him the heck out of there. Again, I talked about in the pregame.
He got up limping at one point, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Okay, so we went through this. Dustin talked to us about this while we were watching the game, right? It's basically not the guy you had planned to play center, Shelton playing center, right?
Yes.
It's Borum, who is he's the
backup.
He might not have
was
made
the backup
team.
swing tackle.
Yeah.
So Borum is the second backup swing
that's
tackle, right?
Yeah.
And then Karan goes out. So basically, you're there with your 4th tackle, and then this guy Jake Curran. I hope I got it right that time. Jake Curran. He comes in at right tackle.
Yes.
At some point, that's your franchise standing behind these guys,
exactly.
right? At some point, you're throwing the ball, and he was limping the play before.
Yes, he was.
Right? So it's just there's a lot of things the last 2 weeks that the people up there have to sit in a room and we say this too much when we talk about the Chicago Bears, and they got to talk about what the hell is going on. What the hell is going on? And it's not a meeting with the leadership committee.
No.
Right? No. The people in charge have to figure out what the hell is going on. Where was the failure? Why did we fail on the Hail Mary? What is going on with all the players questioning you guys? I just when they were talking last week, I just kept thinking to myself, this is what losers do. This is what a losing team does. And they came out today, and I've been a part of games like that, Pat, where it looks like you lost a team.
Yep.
It does.
It definitely did.
Yeah.